Hey guys, how you doing? It's Tom again. Listen, this is kind of a part two, really, of my previous video about some of the things that I had to do in preparation for coming to the Philippines to live. Of course, my previous video talked a little bit more about the actual preparing for the travel. I touched on some of the other prep stuff. But I mean, I didn't get into detail too much on that because I'm sure people were, the guys that are and girls maybe that are, preparing to come here probably wanted to know more about the actual travel, right? Like, with the One Health Pass and all that stuff, right? um, oh, it's kind of funny too. I just saw today. I watched a Jennifer Terry video. She's very good with travel updates and stuff like that. Really, throughout this pandemic, she's provided a lot of good information, and I'm sure some of you guys are aware of her channel. So it's kind of funny because I just found out that Eva Airlines, which the airline that I had mentioned in my previous video, that was my original flight plan. They finally opened, right? Like June 15th, like less than a week ago, I guess, right, or about a week ago. And but I guess they are still requiring, even if you're vaxxed and boosted, right? They're still requiring you a negative COVID test, before you can get on the plane, from wherever your origin is to, even though you're probably going to be only in Taiwan for like, whatever, 4 hours or whatever, 8 hours or right, whatever. Uh, Apparently, they're still requiring. Now, I don't know if they're going to change that, if that's going to change at some point. But anyway, that was kind of interesting. So, kind of made me, whatever. I'm kind of glad I canceled, right? Because then I would have been waiting until the last minute for my, basically my January 6th flight. Uh, you know, you know what I mean. I would have found out like a week or two before. Oh, it's not going to open by June 1st. It's going to be the 15th. So would have kind of screwed up my flight anyway. If I would have waited. You know. But anyway, I want to talk a little bit about. Um, there were some specific things that I did, that maybe not everybody's going to have to do, you know. Um, like I have a condo back in the States, and I had to prepare that. Had to get a management company lined up and everything to prepare that to get rented out, like right after I left, right? I mean, I was living there, until the day I left. So, which makes things a little awkward. Obviously, I also needed my car. I sold my car, but it was literally I lined it up. I was lucky enough to find a buyer that I knew, who was a brother of a friend of mine and a guy that I use, his business. He's actually has a shred business in the Chicago suburbs, a shredding business, and I knew him for several years, and his brother was interested in the car, for his son, uh, high school age son, and anyway, so that worked out perfectly, right? Like we did it a month in advance. I got a deposit, kind of gave receipts and everything, and then the day that I left, they came and got the car and paid the rest of the money, and stuff like that. So I mean, it worked out good. That's not always going to be easy to do, like if you just sold it to somebody that's a total stranger or whatever. But in this case, like I said, it worked out, Um, the other thing, I guess I'm kind of working my backwards, right? Like the other thing that I did. Now I was initially thinking that I was going to rent my condo out furnished, right? So I didn't think I was going to have to get rid of all the furniture and everything. But I wound up having to get rid of the furniture. So I had about 2 weeks, basically at around 2 weeks before I left. That's when well, I'm like, oh, geez, I got to get rid of everything, basically. And so I did, but a couple things I would recommend that I used was Facebook Marketplace, right? And whether you want to sell stuff or give away stuff, right? Because sometimes if you got, especially if you're on a real tight schedule and you don't have a lot of time to like try and sell something, and for it to take too long and all that, you just, if you just give it away for free, man, you'll succeed at getting rid of it. And the thing about giving it away is, okay, you're saving money because you're not going to have to pay some 1-800 junk guy to come get rid of it. You know what I mean? Because they're going to charge you. If you, they could, depending on how much stuff you're getting rid of, it could be $300, $400, $500 that you got to pay. If you got a living room full of furniture or whatever, couch, love seat, chair, other stuff, it gets up there. It's not dirt cheap to do that. So obviously the better scenario is just to get rid of it for free, right? As opposed to having to pay somebody to take it away. And that's what I did, with most of my stuff. There was also I'm sure you guys in the States are aware of, there's an app called Nextdoor, which is kind of a neighborhood like app where people, in your neighborhood sort of get together and online, and they post things like, oh, we went to this restaurant, it was really great. Sometimes it's just minor stuff, it's not usually real important stuff. But on those sites, right, they have where you can buy, sell, or give away stuff also, just like Facebook. And I use them too. And there was a few things that were gotten rid of through that site. I think a lot of it was Facebook, but some of it was that, was the Nextdoor site. So anyway, so that's what I did. I only had one love seat, and that was the most used piece of furniture that I had in my living room, and I got kind of stuck with it because there was a guy that was supposed to take it for free, but unfortunately he couldn't show up, at the time when I needed it gone, like a day before I was going to leave, and then I basically got kind of stuck with it, so I had to, the management company that I hired just had a trash guy get rid of it, you know what I mean, and I had to pay for it. But it wasn't much more than the money that I made from selling some of the furniture that I sold, so it's kind of almost a wash. So anyway, that was some of the things that I did to get rid of stuff. And believe me, and I wouldn't recommend, like having to do all this in 2 weeks, right? But I kind of had to, so normally you want to do this more in advance because there's obviously things that you can do without, you know what I mean? There's like coffee tables, end tables. I mean, I was living by myself, it's not like I had, whatever, like a family, So I could have, if I would have started sooner, you know what I mean? I could have easily, it would have been less stressful. Let's just put it that way. I could have got rid of a lot of stuff like way, 2, 3, 4 weeks in advance, Uh, but anyway, it worked out pretty good though. I mean, even my bed, mattress, box spring, frame, got rid of it, free, Um, and again, if I had more time, right? If I had more than 2 weeks, I could have sold more stuff. Some of the stuff that I gave away, I could have sold. But like I said, when you're in a position where you either get rid of it for free or you got to pay some guy to take it, like a junk guy, what are you going to do? It's best to get rid of it for free, right? So anyway, that was some of the things I did. The big things, right? Setting up, getting a management company to get my place ready to rent out, soon, which they're working on now. Pretty soon it's going to be listed, and probably within a month, hopefully I'll have somebody in there, a tenant, and start getting a little cash flow out of it. And I would say the other things. I mean, some of the other things are just general downsizing. Like I guess one of the, if there was a good thing about the pandemic, is that if you knew you were coming to the Philippines, like in my situation, because I had plenty of time to downsize. Let's put it that way, because you knew you weren't going to come here for a while. You knew at the beginning of this it was going to be at least a year. You know what I mean? And then it obviously extended, and it's been basically almost 2.5 years, right? Or let's just say 2 years. It took about 2 years for them to really open. From the time that the beginning of the pandemic, which was kind of like February, March of 2020. So one of the good things was, you kind of had time to downsize, right? Now the way what I did was I just, I donated stuff. You know what I mean? Like I used Goodwill personally, right? Some people donate to the Salvation Army. That's fine too. Whatever your selection, whatever you prefer. I've given stuff to the Salvation Army in the past, but more recently I just had been kind of using, Goodwill because they take everything. Like you could drop off almost anything there, and they'll take it. They won't say, "Oh, we don't take that" or whatever. So they were kind of a good vehicle to get rid of stuff. And especially like one thing I noticed, you get older, you accumulate a lot of stuff. But I got to the point where I've been gradually downsizing even before I knew absolutely that I was going to come here. You know what I mean? To live. Like even in the last 5 years or so, I've been kind of downsizing into an apartment, from a house to a condo to an apartment, you know what I mean? And then another apartment or condo basically. But, so I had been doing it. And whenever I bought things, like, clothing or whatever, I would get rid of the same amount of clothes that I had bought. In other words, if I bought like 3 shirts and 2 pairs of shorts or pants or whatever, I would go through my stuff and I would get rid of that the same amount of stuff so I wouldn't accumulate. You start accumulating too much stuff. And and so that works pretty good. That worked pretty good for me, to do that, right? Um, I would say one of the other things. Now I did send some stuff here, right? Because actually we had to find an apartment too, and I was in Chicago, and obviously my girlfriend's in the Manila area, and they were looking. They had to look at some condos for rent, right? So that, and they actually moved in um, before I got here. You know what I mean? They were already here like about 3 weeks before I got here. So the place was kind of ready, and you know what I mean. Like she wanted it that way. She didn't want to be like moving in and then like 3 days later I'm here, with all my stuff and luggage and whatnot. So, but we were able to find stuff online. Like we found condos for rent on some of the websites that they have here, and it's not really. I don't know if we use like. I was looking at like dot properties and stuff like that. There's a few major websites here, Lamoody, I think, um, and God, I wish I should have wrote this one down, but I forget the actual one that we wound up finding. You know, this place on. But I mean, I'll put it out there when I figure, when I find out which site it was. But it might have been one of those. There was like 3 of them that I was checking out. And yeah. So basically, they came here, and I have two. My wife has, or we're not married yet, but my girlfriend has 2 grown daughters. So they were actually went to the place and took a video and stuff like that so I can see it. They sent it to me. And that's kind of how we did it. And luckily, we didn't have to look at too much stuff. You know what I mean? There was like, I think only 2 or 3 places, that they had to look at, different locations. I mean, I think there was a couple in this same area, but there was one that was in a different area. So it really wasn't. It could have been a lot worse. As people know in the United States, anyone who's looking for a house, either to rent or to buy in the last couple of years, it's not easy. But so here, luckily, it wasn't so bad. Uh, but anyway, we found a place, and yeah, it worked out good. I mean, you know. Um, so that was kind of another thing, though, right? That I was doing that maybe not everybody's going to have to do. If you're just coming over here and you're totally single guy or something like that, you're not you may not have all the sort of baggage that I have, right? Coming here, like just literally baggage, like stuff, to get rid of, stuff to bring, stuff to send in an LBC box, right? Um, but so I will say it wasn't. easy. I mean, there's a lot of stuff at once, right? Like you're doing a lot of this stuff within a month of leaving. You know what I mean? And it's funny how, as time goes by, like first I knew that they were going to open in February, so you're like, oh, okay. So then the first thing you do is I bought a ticket, for June because I just figured I got to give myself time. I need 4 months. You know what I mean to do all this stuff. But it's kind of funny how you sort of delay your stress. You know what I mean? Like, you're just like, oh, okay, yeah, I got plenty of time. You know what I mean? Now it's 3 months, right? And you're still like, I got time. But I'm doing things. Every day I'm doing something. You know what I mean? Like downsizing or whatever. You got a list of stuff. And luckily, I wasn't real busy with work like this year. It's kind of I'm a real estate broker. But I mean, and I'm still doing some referrals now. I'm still licensed, and I have agents in my office, a couple agents that I'm doing referrals with. And but I mean, as far as actual sort of business, like that I was doing, a little bit, at the beginning of the year, the first couple months of the year, you know what I mean? There was some stuff going on, but after that, it was just prepping to come here. So I knew I slid right into the referral thing, even while I was still in Chicago, because I wanted to get that ball rolling and see if that was going to work out. Um, so anyway, that was sort of another thing that I was doing, right? Like I said, a lot of this was about totally maybe 4 months before I left, but it kind of it's funny how your brain works. You just delay it, like, oh yeah. I mean, you're doing things, but there's no stress. You're just like, oh yeah, I got time. I got 2 months, okay. And then it's like, hey, I got 1 month, and then that's when it really starts kicking up. You know what I mean? Like, you're like, man, I gotta, you know what I mean? Yeah, that's when you really start, you start getting kind of stressed a little bit, and whatever. But you do it. You do what you got to do, right? Now the other thing too, right, for me, and this is something that whatever, a lot of you guys might not be doing or might not need to do or whatever, but I'm also want to get I'm working on my SRRV, my military courtesy SRRV, right? So there was a couple things that I did in the States. And really, actually, the only thing I got to do here is when I get when my pension starts, which will be soon, like about 3 months. That's when you get that that requirement, or you show proof of that, right? Okay, now I got my pension coming in, and you have to get you have to get the first check or so. And so you have that, and so that's going to be done. If you do it the way I did it, that's done here in the Philippines. But it's just something you can get online, something you have to get apostilled, though. You have to get an apostille in the States. You know, when it comes to like the Social Security, anything that comes from the United States or from your country, whatever country that is, Western country or whatever, it's going to have to be apostilled. Like you can't do it in the or they require it. That's a whole nother thing. I don't even want to really talk about that because there's other vloggers that have done pretty good videos on that. So I'm just going to let you guys know that that's something that I've been working on, also like before, within the last couple months before I left. It's just like another thing, right? Like, okay, there's one more thing you got to do. And so, so that like I said, just once the SOCH kicks in, then I get a medical. There's a medical clearance thing that I'm going to do here, because it's very. If you try to do it in the States, it's like it's weird stuff. It's like chest X-rays, and it's things that Filipino citizens often have to do when they are applying for jobs, or when they're at that stage where they're going to get hired, and then there's that they make you also do a medical clearance. So they're used to doing it, but it's a little different from a Western standpoint, because it's like chest X-ray, stool sample, urine test, and stuff like that. It's a couple of the things on there are things that we don't really do in the West, at least not for like for a visa or for a job or whatever. But there is reasons why they do them here. Um, but anyway, so yeah, so that's one of the things I'm doing. I made a list here. I just don't want to forget anything. um, it looks like, oh yeah, and then of course, um, well, yeah, you already know about the plane tickets, the One Health Pass. Of course, that was something I covered on the first video, which was 2 days before I left. I did that. It wasn't bad either, It wasn't that difficult, Um, and then something maybe people don't always think about, right? Is, hey, I canceled my internet and my cable and all that, which I had at home. Well, you don't want to be without internet, right? Like a week or two before you leave. I mean, that's when you need it the most. So I set it up to stop, like basically the day after I left. But of course, I returned my equipment, the actual box, the router box, the cable box, and all that, the day that I left. You know what I mean? When I was like didn't need it anymore, I'm like, all right, I'm done, man. It was like noon or whatever it was, early afternoon of the day that I was leaving, like maybe 3 hours before my brother took me to the airport, and that's what I did it. And it was pretty smooth, I mean, I was in and out of there in like 5, maybe 10 minutes or whatever. They give you a receipt for everything. Um, but I don't know, that pretty much, I think, covers it. I mean, so I just hope that I was able to help you guys out. Anybody that's maybe doing some of the same stuff, that I had to do, it gives you a little information about it. Especially that getting rid of furniture stuff. That worked out pretty good. It really did. And it's a little bit of a pain in the neck because when you're giving out stuff for free, you'll get a lot of responses. You know what I mean? You'll get like 6, 7, 8 messages on Messenger. Oh yeah, I'm interested. Is it still available? And you kind of have to almost, I don't know. You look at them and you almost have to figure out, well, which one of these is going to be somebody that's going to show up. You know what I mean? Because you don't want to be, because sometimes people just don't show up. You know what I mean? Like they'll, even if it's free, like they don't show up, and then you're like, oh man, now I gotta, and there is a way when you get somebody solid that is going to show up, you can mark it pending that item, like in Marketplace, right? And then you won't get so many messages after that while you're waiting. You might be waiting 12 hours or even a day the next day for them to come get it. And in the meantime, instead of getting all these messages from all these other people, you won't get that many if you mark it like pending. And then, of course, as soon as they pick it up, I was pretty good at going in there and marking it sold or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, just get rid of it, man. I don't want any more messages or whatever. Because some of that stuff stacks up, in your Messenger account. Like if you got Facebook, a lot of us do. So it's like you don't want all that crap in your account. You know what I mean? Like, but yeah. So anyway, I hope that stuff was some of this stuff was helpful for you. Yeah. Now we're gonna start putting out some videos. Might involve a little bit of editing, which I'm afraid of, right? 'Cause I don't really know how to edit much or whatever. Like I'm mostly just been doing talking head videos. Like even with I have a real estate YouTube channel, basically like in Chicago. It's just talking head stuff, and it's nothing that really requires editing. So, so we'll be sort of trying to figure out how to incorporate videos of that we've taken and places that we've been, even going back to 3 years ago. When we first physically met. You know what I mean? Like back in like January of 2019. Um, and actually, me and my girl, we actually met online. So we were like video chatting for like, God, like 7 months before we met. 8 months, I think, actually. It was like May of 2018, early May. And then I wasn't able to come, of course, until like early January of 2019. So that's why I say it's been like 4 years. It's been over 4 years that we've been, like a couple. And, but like I said, we went to a lot of places. different places on the first trip, and then places on the second trip, and then the third trip, different places. Try to we covered a lot of different areas. Not your typical, what I mean, like, oh, let's just go to Bohol or whatever, or Dumaguete or whatever. We kind of covered a lot of places, and but we'll talk about that in future videos now. So, all right, guys, that's about it. I'm gonna stop yapping. I hope you guys like, subscribe, comment. Leave me any questions, man. And I'll help you out. I'll give you an answer. If, and if I don't know off the top of my head, I'll look it up. And see if I can help you out. So, all right, guys, that's about it. Have a good day. I'll see you later.